both to really get to the audience that you're really trying to reach, followed by the relationship economy, and then just some easy ways to test it out, low risk ways to test out if what you're doing is really resonating, if your customers are there, if what you're trying to get them to do is achievable. I have questions at the end, but please feel free to interrupt me throughout. I'd love this to be more of a conversation than me just spitting words at you. So anytime you have anything that you want to add, or that you want some clarification on, or you want to ask about, please just shout it out. Don't feel like you have to raise your hand or anything like that either. So making sure that we're all on the same page with what some of these terms mean. KPIs are key performance indicators. Those are going to be what we actually measure. Those are going to be the statements that we say we want to achieve. So these should be the same or similar for your overarching KPIs. Your digital should be a part of your holistic marketing and business strategy, not a separate piece. That's starting to become more of the norm, but my social media career started in 2008 when I walked into the web manager's office of my first job and said, "So what is this Twitter thing?" So I've really seen how over the past decade and more that it has begun to be integrated, but it's not completely there yet. So when you're thinking about those KPIs, think about what your business KPIs are and how you can apply those to digital. I'm going to say lift a lot, and that's like the increase in improvement that we're looking for. So if we're doing a brand recognition campaign, for example, we want to see lift in search to your site. You should see that search for your company or your product or whatever. You should see a lift in it, and that's what I mean. I'm probably going to say follower and fan interchangeably, and I put this up here because I've definitely got questions on this a lot before, because I do say them interchangeably, and I don't know if that's necessarily the right thing to do, but it's what I do. So anytime I say that, it's someone who likes or follows a social media page. And then finally, engagement's going to be any sort of interaction that fan or follower has with your social. That's likes, that's comments, that's shares.
Is there a difference between a fan and a true fan?
There's definitely a difference between a fan and a true fan. So for this purpose, fan means someone who likes or follows your social media page. A true fan, I think we could call maybe even like an evangelist, someone who is really looking to have that relationship with your brand, with your product, whatever it might be, and really, be that word of mouth for you that you can use. You could see product with them. You could, really engage with them because they are such a true believer in what you're doing. When we talk about the relationship economy, that's what you're trying to achieve, is that true fan.
Is there a way to track a fan from a true fan?
For that, I would say engagement and things like that. I don't know so there are definitely softwares that you can see the affinity of someone towards you. Those softwares like Hootsuite, like Sprout Social, those sort of things will really help you see who those fans are, and not only their affinity towards you, but their influence in what you're interested in. So, just looking at social as a whole, you might say that someone with 10,000 followers is an influencer, when really someone with 300 followers, they're all science writers, and you're trying to get an article about, or some sort of new discovery about something scientific out there. They're much more valuable as an influencer than that person who has 10,000 followers. Micro-influencers as well also have much more engaged fans. So again, you might see that big number and think, oh, this is better, but really the engagement level. The software that does that is escaping me right now, but I'll get it to you as far as what that is. Because it's really great, because it will show you, like I said, this person has 150 followers, but for business, they're, a 78% influencer in that realm because of who is following them. So it really analyzes all of those things. To do it manually is definitely a more laborious process, to go through your fans to actually see who's engaging, who they're following, that sort of thing. It's possible if they have their information public, but it's not very scalable, which is where the software comes in.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else before we move on? Okay. So starting with Facebook, how many of you are on Facebook yourself? How many of your parents are on Facebook? How many of your grandparents are on Facebook? Yeah. So Facebook is so funny because everybody hates it, but everyone is on it, and it's still the #1 site, and it's still growing. What's really interesting is that mobile is where everybody is accessing Facebook from. And I can say that that's absolutely true for me, that it's such a habit to just get on my phone and take a look at Facebook when I have a lull in the action. What's interesting though about that is that 94% of all of the ad revenue from Facebook is coming from mobile. So what that means to you is when you are trying to reach new fans or new customers, making sure that wherever you're sending them to from their ad is optimized for mobile. That means, either having a separate landing page, which we'll get into UTM parameters in a little bit, and that could be super useful for you to see, exactly where all of your traffic is coming from. But that could also mean just making sure that wherever that is, it's friendly to mobile. Whatever you want them to do next isn't buried in that page. It's all about the customer journey. And when you know that it's starting from mobile, making sure that whatever you want them to do from there is as easy as it can be to do from a phone with your thumb is really important. So this stat was super interesting to me as well, that 76% of female, so not 76% of users are female, 76% of all females are on Facebook, and 66% of males are on Facebook. So again, when you're thinking about who your audience is or who you want your audience to be, who these messages should be getting to, think about where they are and what they're doing. Overall, as you're starting out, these are really great resources to use to figure out, to start testing when works for your audience. So, highest traffic is midweek between 1 and 3 p.m. and an 18% higher engagement on Thursday and Friday, but that differs by audience. So when you're on your Facebook page itself, your business page, you just go into insights at the top. You can see all sorts of things, but this is when your audience, when your fans are actually online. So you can see that for this group, they're on first thing in the morning and after work. So that isn't this case for, that wide range. So it's really important to do what works for your audience. This will tell you everything you could ever possibly want to know about your audience, what kind of posts they're engaging with, what sort of content they want to see, how long they're staying on your page, all of that stuff. So this is a really great tool to use to really figure out who your audience is, and again, either use it to speak to them, or if it's not the audience that you want, figure out how to change that and iterate on that so that you can get to those audience members that are important. So after Google, YouTube is the second largest, most used search engine on the internet. So it's really, really important to, if you're a B2C business, or if you're working with B2C as a consultant or something, to figure out how to make YouTube work for you. This isn't a place to put commercials. This is a place to really inform your customer. This is a place to really give them that sense of, who you are, what the culture of your company is, what you care about, what the product is going to do for them, why people care about it. And people are using this to help make their buying decisions. So it's really important to give the information necessary. Now, this is really at the beginning of someone's search when they're trying to make a buying decision. So measuring the success is going to be something that you have to figure out. So again, we're talking about those KPIs. I would say that a click through to buy is not a good KPI for YouTube because people are doing it so early. And most of the research says that it takes a customer 12 interactions with a brand or a product before they decide to buy it. So if this is interaction 1 or 2, that's a bad thing to try to measure success if it's, do people buy from YouTube? So really making sure that when you're setting up these KPIs that you're doing it in a way that isn't, cutting yourself off at the knees because you're measuring success the wrong way. So this is the Google keyword, ad keyword planner that can help you with what those search terms should be when you're setting up your YouTube channel, when you're setting up your videos and saying what they are. This is also really great for just SEO in general. So when you're setting up your webpage, what people are actually searching to get to you. Something that I have never worked at a company with the bandwidth to do this, but it's been my dream forever, is to have someone dedicated to also looking at Google Trends every day to see what sort of things are trending around your product or business so that you can add those SEO terms for whatever the trends are so that you can really give yourself the best chance of being found. Like I said, it's hard to find the bandwidth to do that every day, but even at the beginning or making sure it's quarterly or whatever it is that you're going in and doing that is great. So while Instagram is owned by Facebook, it is its own entity, and it's the 3rd largest site for social right now. What's really interesting on all of this too is as we go through, like when we get to LinkedIn, videos don't do well on LinkedIn. So it's not a matter of doing one thing everywhere. It's really figuring out where your audience is and making sure that you're doing the right thing for that platform and that audience. So if Instagram is where your audience is, that's great. Then video is definitely the way to go. And stories on Instagram are also being viewed at a much higher rate than on Snapchat or on Facebook. So this is the place if you do have that visual, more casual type of vibe that you're trying to get at, this is a good place to do it. This I thought was a really interesting graph to show too, just who all is there, where they are. And what is really interesting to me too, especially if you are trying to sell things, is their income levels. On Instagram, or I'm sorry, on LinkedIn as well, there's a really great stat about the income levels and the education levels of the people there. So again, thinking about who that audience is and if this is the right place to get to them. So Gen Z is using Twitter a lot, and Twitter in general is younger. So if you're looking at that Gen Z, if you're looking at that alpha generation that's coming up behind them, really seeing where they are and what sort of content they're interacting with. Again, video here is very, very important. And 93% of those videos are being viewed on mobile. So what that means is, does your video require sound to be understood? If that's the case, really think about, does captioning make sense for this? Because if someone, especially like a Gen Zer, for example, is sitting in class or sitting wherever they are and scrolling through, are they able to turn the volume on to understand it? So really thinking about those little details of how to get your message across is going to be really important. And then finally, LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I think, is such a major white space for a lot of people. How many of you, if you are, either entrepreneurs or are working for companies, how many are B2B companies? Okay, great. So this, I think, is such an amazing opportunity for B2B companies because a lot of people are on it looking for good quality content, and not a lot of people are doing it. Only 0.2% of users are publishing articles on LinkedIn. And it's free to do. You just need to have that expertise, have something to say, be able to back that up. Because 45% of people who are reading it are in these upper level decision-making positions. So I think that it is a giant opportunity to be able to get those ideas through and on a more detailed way. This is the only place where long form content is appreciated as far as social goes. Twitter, there's a character limit. Everything else, even Instagram, 60 seconds is as much time as you have on an Instagram video. I don't know the last time that I've actually watched all 60 seconds of an Instagram video. So thinking about people's attention spans and knowing that they're willing here to do that is something that I think is a great opportunity. So then this graph, which again, you'll all be getting a link to this presentation, this just goes across everything else and as far as where the demographics are across all of these different platforms. This is from the Pew Research Center from earlier this year, so it's as up to date as is available right now. So again, thinking about who that audience is, where they are, and how best to reach them. So then it's really important to measure if that's actually working. Again, Google is great at everything, and their campaign URL builder is a great place to go to put these UTM parameters onto your URLs to make sure that you're seeing exactly what's working. So for example, in Google Analytics right now, you can see if your traffic's coming from Facebook or if it's coming from Twitter, or where it's coming from. But you can't see if that's from your Twitter or your Facebook or whatever it is. That could be from, those actual true fans who are talking about you. So putting these UTM parameters around your links to see where your traffic is coming from, to see, again, if that ROI is there, that return on investment is there for the time that you're putting into these digital and social sites. So if you go to the just Google campaign URL builder, it will walk you through exactly how to do this. So it's just a URL that you put, if it's Facebook, or you can put whatever you want there, just as long as it's consistent, so you know exactly what that traffic is telling you, where that traffic is coming from, and then you're able to really measure if your email marketing is doing what you're hoping that it will do. If your Twitter marketing is doing what you hope it will do. That way too, you can see if, again, you should shift some of your efforts, if you should ramp things up because it is doing really well, whatever it might be.
Is that better than Bitly?
So it depends. So for something like Facebook or Twitter or whatever it might be, I like it more because it falls into your Google Analytics anyway. So it's all still in that same place. And for Facebook and Twitter, you can get rid of that URL, and LinkedIn, same thing. If it's something that shortened Bitly link is going to look better than having, this giant thing that says,
UTM campaign textile.
Right, exactly. Like that wouldn't be something that I would want to show. Now, you could combine the two, do this so it all falls into your Google Analytics, and then shorten that in Bitly so that, all of the analytics are still going to the same place.
Is this paid or unpaid?
Unpaid.
Okay.
Yeah, to the point of costs, how do the costs differ across the platforms? On your last slide, I was thinking about, is there like premium pricing on any of these, or how do you think of, is something always more expensive for the same sort of reach?
Yeah.
How do you think about the costs of these?
Yeah, so to get on any of these is free. Organic is free across all of this. What's really nice about all of these as well is that you can set your budget. So, if you only have $500 to spend and you want to, have $10.50 on Facebook, you can do that, which is really nice. What I have found is the better the end consumer that you're reaching, the more expensive it is. So we ran a digital marketing campaign a couple years ago here at Carnegie Mellon, and we did it Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And LinkedIn, a cost per click was like $8. But the traffic coming from that, they stayed on that page for like 10 minutes. Whereas Facebook and Instagram, a cost per click was like 75 cents, and they stayed on the page for 30 seconds. So I think that's because LinkedIn, you can get so drilled down onto who those people are. And for this, being a Carnegie Mellon campaign, it was very important to us to be reaching the decision makers, to be reaching those people who, were in certain industries. And that's where that could show me that versus on Facebook or Twitter, where it's like, okay, well, they follow, business publications, or they say that they're interested in robotics or whatever it is. So the click was much more expensive, but it was a much more valuable click.
Okay, so you're paying for precision across the board is a good way to think of it.
Right. Anything else on this? Okay. So psychographics versus demographics. All of that stuff that we just talked about were the demographics of all of those sites. But as we are going to talk about a little bit as we move on in the relationship economy, it's so much more important to those true fans, like you mentioned, to really feel like they are in lockstep with you as far as what you care about, what your values are. If your culture, you like the culture of your company, if it reflects their lifestyle and what they want to do. So really thinking about that and knowing that, places like Facebook especially, and all of these other social sites, we had everybody raise their hand and you're all on it and your parents are all on it and your grandparents are all on it. So the audience is there no matter the age group. So really thinking about how to get them down to their psychographics, what they care about. When you're in these things like Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, one of the really cool things that you can do is take a look at their interests. So you can take a look at the pages that they're following. You can take a look at the Twitter accounts that they're following to see if those psychographics really match up with what you're trying to do, and making sure that your messaging behind it is really showing that, showing your culture, showing what you care about through it. Now, what's interesting about psychographics versus demographics is that they're qualitative, so they're a lot harder to measure. But it's your job to figure out what the quantitative correlation is between that, how to make your qualitative into quantitative. So maybe that's something like, with that lift coming through, if it's something that, we're doing a campaign there where we're going to show our candidate, talking about saving the parks. And so we're not going to ask anybody to do anything. We're not going to ask them to click through. There's going to be no call to action right on it. It's just going to be, candidate X supports public parks. So then the quantitative that could come from that is, okay, are people then searching, are your search results for candidate X public parks going up? Are you seeing that lift? And that's how you can apply that quantitative to that qualitative and really capturing those psychographics. From there, then you can break that down into your demographics to see which of those key groups that we're so familiar with in the demographics are really responding to it, and then seeing if you need to change or pivot a little bit to see how to get those other groups within that psychographic. But it's a really interesting way to really start developing that relationship, which again, as we're moving into this relationship economy, is so important. So I've been saying the relationship economy a lot. We've been in this consumer economy since World War II. You know, we started mass producing everything. It was very much, you know, refrigerators for everybody. But right now, we're starting to see a change into this relationship economy. We all care a lot more about where our products are coming from, what types of companies are producing them, the culture there. And we want to make sure that we feel like we're being seen by this company. It's not something that we want, you know, you're one of the 500,000 people that we're selling this to. We're selling this to you. So I was at a conference a few weeks ago, and someone was presenting on the relationship economy. He was talking about when he was engaged and had a wedding website on the Knot. And, you know, he set it all up. They got all of his information, when the wedding is going to be, you know, where it was, all of this information. And then the engagement ended. So he contacted them and said, hey, I need to take this website down. The engagement ended. You know, if there is no wedding, there shouldn't be a wedding website. So they took it down. And the day of his wedding came, the day of his wedding went. And the next day, he got an email from the Knot saying, congratulations. How about we help you order your thank you cards? And obviously he was furious and heartbroken and all of those bad feelings because they had all of this data about him, but they weren't talking to each other. And that's what's so important with the relationship economy, is that you have all of these data points. We just went through all of the different places that you can find out information about your consumer, your individual consumer. But if they're not talking to each other, they're not getting this consistent message. And you're going to have a customer who is very upset with that end result. And, you know, then go to conferences and tell everybody about it. And then those people go and come and talk to you guys and tell you all about it. And now everybody hates the Knot. But the company, or the consistent message, is not just, you know, these data points. It's also the company culture. So really thinking about, you know, what your culture and your employees are saying about you, because that is very important in this relationship economy as well, to make sure that that customer becomes that super fan because they believe in what's happening. Now, if I knew the way to take this to scale.
I thought that finished your point.
No, good.
Just real quick regarding consistency. So my audience is the students at CMU. So typically what I try to do is share the same social media content across the board. And I don't know if that's a smart way to do it. Like if I post something on Twitter, I post it on Facebook as well and on Instagram. And then sometimes I'll pick and choose. So I'm confused sometimes as to what I should focus on more. Because some students seem to be more on Facebook, some of them seem to be more on Instagram. So I'm just trying to stay consistent without bombarding people with the same posts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so for that, I would say it depends on the information that you're trying to get to them. If it's something about an event or a deadline or something that this is very, you know, straightforward, the same across is totally fine. If it's more informational, getting that same message to them is really important, but adapting it for the platform that you're on. So that might be, you know, more of a video message on Instagram versus, you know, a 200 character tweet versus, you know, a photo album on Facebook. So Really taking a look at all of those stats as far as what your audience is reacting with. And once you're in all of those platforms yourself and seeing your insights, okay, my audience, even though Facebook as a whole reacts more to video from 1 to 3, my audience responds to photos at 6 a.m. So figuring out what your audience is reacting to on each platform and making sure that that message is the same, but it's getting to them the way that they're reacting to it. So what I always said when I was working here in social media was, my job is to make sure that we're telling the stories that Carnegie Mellon wants to have told in a way that the audience wants to hear them. So that means making sure that that is, it's talking about the relationship economy, really, is making sure that we're not making them do any extra work to get that message, because that's the way that they like to receive messaging. That's the way that they are used to receiving messaging, and it just is seamless with everything else. Yeah. So anyway, scaling this relationship economy is the challenge. Obviously the Knot isn't doing it because it's hard. It's hard to make sure that once you are this big company with a web team and a social team and an email marketing team and a PR team, that they're all sharing this data so that you as an individual are getting that same consistent messaging. So, as you are moving forward, as you're working either for yourselves or for a company, figuring out the best way to do this is going to be really, really important. So then it's really important to test all of this out. So once you figure out what those KPIs are, and once you turn those qualitative factors into quantitative KPIs, it's super easy to just write a quick test on it. If you already have a website that your company is running out of, or that you have access to, setting up a landing page with those UTM parameters to it is great. If not, something like Squarespace is a super easy way to set up a cheap landing page to see if what you're trying to do is working. And then in all of the sources, you'll see these step-by-step ways to set up these ads. And then, like I was saying, you can choose as little money or much money as you want to really test it out to see if, once you're trying to sell a product, for example, and that's what the click-through is taking you to. If that's not working, well, then maybe it's, do you need to have more information about it? So it's taking you to learn more about it, and then the next step in the customer journey. But if you're needing to prove that something like this is working, or needing to even prove if your product is working, doing it this way is a very cost-effective and easy way to do that. So here is everything in much more depth than what we covered today about how to really make sure that you're getting all of your good work out there and getting it to the right people, figuring out, why people would be interested in this sort of thing, how to set it all up. If you want to dig in deeper to any of these are all here for you. If you have any questions about them, I'm more than happy to answer any of them too. And with that, but I'll leave it on this page in case people are taking pictures. I'll take any questions or talk more about anything that anybody's interested in. Yeah.
How much time should you devote to optimizing your SEO as opposed to coming up with good content? Because I've read the black hat techniques. Google frowns upon those days. The best way to do it is just to make stuff people want to see.
Yeah, that I agree with that, making stuff that people want to see. But if people don't find it, that's really important too. So what, in my perfect world, what I would say is once you're setting up all of your content, going through that SEO keyword Google keyword ad builder, figuring out what those keywords are and applying them right away. That will take as long as it takes. And I think that sort of thing will become more streamlined the more you do it. The first time you do anything, I think, takes a lot longer. But then after that, depending on how much traffic you're getting, I think starting monthly and setting aside a few hours to go through, see what the new trends are, going into Google Trends, see what in the last month people have really been searching for related to your topic, and adding those SEO terms is a good rule of thumb. So I would say, 90% of your time is dedicated to creating really good content. 10% or less is dedicated to getting that SEO optimized to make sure people are getting there. And like I said, I think that will shrink as you do it more and it becomes more second nature.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? Yeah.
So, how are social media platforms coming up in search engine searches, search pages? What's the relationship like? You know what I'm asking?
You mean like if you're on Google and you're searching for something and it pops up, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are those coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just, the behemoth that these pages are. But one of the things that, just to make sure it's clear, people are going to YouTube directly now to search for things versus going to YouTube and finding it. So, yeah. So those things definitely are, and that's a lot of times you'll see if, it's a small business that doesn't actually have a website, but they have a Facebook page, that's where it will pop up. But people are going to YouTube as the search engine.
So you're searching on the platform.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, another question I have is, recognizing that the insights can present differently and be measured differently on all the different platforms. And then you use Hootsuite and everything's nice and clean, but it's not really all things created equal. For purposes of like reporting out on your KPIs, just a twofold question: Do you recommend reporting out on each one of the platforms differently? And do you have a recommendation on, say, Hootsuite, as opposed to actually taking the time to go into each one of the different platforms and look at insights? Like, I know, for example, with Twitter, I always got much better information going to the Twitter Insights page than I did on Hootsuite.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah. So 100% I would recommend going to the platform itself. There are just some, firewalls between the two that it's not a complete open communication between the two. So you are going to get much better insights from the platform itself. As far as how to report on it, I think it depends on who your audience is. I think that there is, the audience who would appreciate that granular information. And I think that's very important, even if it's just for you to be reporting and tracking. But then what I would say is to normalize all of the data across the platform. So if it's, followers by, every 100 per every 100 follower or whatever it is, or every 1,000 followers, just to see very equally across what things are doing. So if you have 50,000 followers on Facebook, but you only have 5,000 on Instagram, normalizing it to per 1,000 followers can really help show that that ROI on whether people are engaging with it. If that audience is, that small but mighty really engaged audience versus a bigger audience that might only have, a few of those things. That's also a good way to compare yourself to your competition. Again, the platform that has the same thing as will show you if people are influencers in your field. It's in here, it's just not coming out, but I'll get it to everybody. But you can set that up as well to see who your competition is and compare yourself to them on social, and that again will normalize it down to per 1,000 followers. So like for us, for example, at Carnegie Mellon, when we were comparing ourselves to Harvard, they have millions and millions of Facebook fans. But when it was normalized down, their engagement rates were a lot lower than ours because, you know, everybody likes Harvard, but who's actually that super fan or that actual fan who's engaging with them. So that's a really nice way too to be able to see across the board, not just for your different platforms, but then making that a little bit broader too.
So, the benefit to using, say, Hootsuite, you're recommending go to the platforms for the insight scheduling, and, you know, shortened links, hourly links. Are there any other advantages, in your opinion, on the Hootsuite? You might wanna-
I think it's great for monitoring, actually. So Hootsuite lets you set up, you know, all of these different streams, and it's all right there. So it really depends on how wide your computer screen is, how many streams you can take a look at. So I always thought that was super useful. If there was a certain topic that was trending or that we wanted to really pay special attention to, it was really useful to be able to then, you know, go into that and always have that. It's one of the things that's really nice with that too is that you can search for things minus certain words. So if something is happening and you know that it's happening and it's going to be a really big deal, but you don't want to miss anything else that people are saying about your brand, you can go in and say, you know, whatever your brand is minus whatever that big news making event is. So like when President Obama was here for the Frontiers conference, for example, you know, searching for anyone talking about Carnegie Mellon minus Obama was important to make sure that we weren't missing any messages or important things that were happening because there was just such an inundation of all of this messaging about the president being here.
I use it a lot for, like, a lot of people mention the sports center in Hootsuite, and I can catch it and see what they're talking about, to see if it's something negative, which it normally isn't, but it's a good way to just see what people are saying about us.
Right.
And sometimes I'll go, ooh, I need to retweet that.
Right.
It's something that we're collaborating on, that they're already mentioning.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's before I even mention it.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to just kind of keep everything, you know, organized.
Yeah, absolutely. And then again, to your actual fan thing, retweeting what people are saying about you, it's so powerful to have someone say good things about you versus you saying that good thing about yourself, you know? So being able to find it through that and being able to share it is great.
How many evangelists do you need?
Say that again?
How many of these true fans do you need?
Oh. I don't know.
Like Kevin Kelly talks about it.
Say that again?
Kevin Kelly,
Okay.
his 1,000 true fans.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's all taking things to scale. So, you know, if you're starting out and you are working with 150 followers and they're really engaged, 150 followers, that's awesome. But keeping that engagement as you grow, keeping those ratios as you go is where the trick is. So I'm not going to put a number on it because I think it does depend on how big you are, but being as engaged with those people and listening to them so that, you know, again, they feel that relationship, will keep those fans with you as you go. All right, anything else? Well, thank you very much. Like I said, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. And thank you so much for having me.